Hello students, welcome to the English class. Today we are going to do the first poem in your Invitation to English poetry section, that is The Daffodils by William Wordsworth. Now what is daffodil? Daffodil is a beautiful flower that is typical to England. Now we see many kinds of flowers all around us in our locality. You must have seen so many kinds of flowers. In Oriya, if you say, it can be Togara Phulla, Mandara Phulla, Cornera Phulla, and it can be, so these kind of flowers that you see, but you haven't come across this flower which is called the daffodil. Now what is the daffodil like? It is a golden yellow bell shaped flower. Much if you can take a nearest comparison in our own locality, it will be something like the Cornera Phulla. So, it is a yellow color flower, it is a bell shaped flower, and it is, that golden yellow attracts actually. Now, coming to the poet. The poet is William Wordsworth, who was an English romantic poet. He was born on 7th April 1770 in Cockermouth, United Kingdom. He died on 23rd April 1850, Redall, United Kingdom. He was a poet of nature. He loved nature. He loved to be in the lap of nature. So that is how he was mostly accorded as a nature poet. He was also known as the poet laureate of England. One of his famous quotes I have shown in this slide, which is about poetry. Poetry, he says, is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, and it takes its origin from emotions recollected in tranquility. Now coming to the next slide, that is The Daffodils is a lyric poem by William Wordsworth. It is one of the most well known or the best work of his. The poem was inspired by an event on 15th April 1802, in which he came across a large stretch of daffodils. This poem was originally published in 1807. Now let me give a reading of the poem so that you have a feel of the poem. What is the poem all about? Now the poem Daffodils. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodils. Now this is the poem, and we can also see a handwritten manuscript of William Wordsworth. Now it is very interesting to note, see, 200 years before this poem had been written, and this is a very well preserved manuscript of his. It is written on his own handwriting, and students will be interesting to note this kind of thing. And this is also known as daffodils only, although we have it in our poem as The Daffodils. It was in 1802 that he wrote this manuscript. Now one more thing that is very important to note. William Wordsworth, as I told you, is a nature poet, and he was brought up in the lap of nature, and nature attracted him, all the elements of nature. Just see, where was it that he was inspired by this to write this poem. Now Ullswater is in the English Lake District, and this particular portrait that I am showing you is from Gobaro Park, which was drawn in painted in watercolor in 1819, and it was done by J.M.W. Turner. Now, let me explain you the poem stanza by stanza. Coming to the first stanza. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. Now, the very first line and the first word I, the first person singular number, that is I. The poet is talking about a personal experience, a subjective experience, is talking about an experience that he had, a first hand experience. And he says, I wander lonely as a cloud. Why does the poet feel lonely? It is his mental condition. How was he feeling? He was feeling lonely. You may be in a crowd, but in your mental state, you may feel lonely. So now when he is feeling lonely, he compares himself to that of a cloud that is high up which is over the vale. Vale means V-A-L-E is valley and hills. So high up over the valley and hills, what do you find? The cloud is floating. And how does it look? It appears to the poet as if it is lonely, as if there is no one else to give him company. So when all at once I saw a crowd, then suddenly the poet was wandering aimlessly. He didn't have a particular aim to go to that place. Like going to, suppose we want to come to the college. Now we know the direction, but here the poet was not concerned about going to a particular place. That is why he is saying, I wandered, I was just going in an aimless manner. Like what? Like the cloud. Now when I say, there is a typical thing that he is mentioning here, that we can talk about the figure of speech that has been used here, that is called a simile. Now what is a simile? Two dissimilar things are compared with a point of similarity. Poet is comparing himself to that of the cloud. Both of them are dissimilar. Point of comparison is that he is lonely. Now when all at once I saw a crowd, what did he see? All at once. So he is surprised to see what? Suddenly something arrested his attention, something attracted him. What was it? It was a huge crowd. Crowd means large number, a host of daffodils, a large number of daffodils, golden daffodils, not only daffodils, the color which was attractive also, it is golden yellow color. Now that was beside the lake. Beside the lake, now that is what can we say, that the location of the daffodils, where were the daffodils located? Now that he has already seen the daffodils, he is very much attracted towards the daffodils, moving towards the daffodils, looking at the golden yellow color. Now he is coming towards it and saying, what is this location? This location is under the trees and beside the lake. Because that is the lake I had shown you in that picture. That was a lake, and all around the lake you find, there is like a border line, and you find here the daffodils are growing, and all through for miles together they are stretching. And what does he find? A gentle breeze is blowing. As the gentle breeze is blowing, the daffodils are making a swinging motion. They are dancing to and it appears to the poet as if they are dancing to and fro, fluttering. So what is fluttering? Moving to and fro in the gentle breeze or the wind. And daffodils, as I had explained you, is a yellow colored flower. So naturally the yellow color had attracted the poet, and the poet is moving towards it to find out, and he is really attracted by what? How the beautiful flowers are making a rhythmic movement. Now we in our own Odisha, we have this Sambalpuri dance where you find they have a synchronized movement. So moving together in a particular way, and that is how you find moving in a particular way, and that is how it looks very elegant, very graceful to see that the movement is to and fro motion. Whatever they do, it is in a synchronized manner, rhythmic manner. So here also we find that the daffodils were moving in a very synchronized manner. As the gentle breeze is blowing, it is taking them to and making them a to and fro motion. So they are appearing as what? As if they are fluttering and dancing in the breeze. And about, as I said, about the simile part of it, the simile part of it is because the poet is comparing himself to that of the clouds. He is comparing that, you know, just like the clouds are lonely, it appears to the poet, I am also lonely, and and I was moving aimlessly, maybe the clouds are moving aimlessly. And then he says, you know, and that too because there are valleys, there are hills, and suddenly when he says, you know, at once I saw a crowd, there are a large number, host. Now what is a host? Host to something, you host a show. So here also as if the daffodils were hosting him a show. And what is the beautiful show? The beautiful show of the dancing daffodils. Okay, so golden color, dancing daffodils, hosting a show, large number of daffodils, so many elements of nature that he's talking about. He's talking about the clouds, he's talking about the valleys, he's talking about the hill, he's talking about the beautiful dancing of the daffodils, and the golden yellow daffodils, they are all around him and fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Now as the poet, you know, poet is totally, you know, although he stated his mental condition, what did he say? That, you know, I am feeling lonely. But when he finds the daffodils, he finds that it is a beautiful company all around him. There is nature which is going to give him the support to make him feel that he is there with someone. In company of what? In the company of the daffodils. Now we move on to the second stanza, where you find that they are continuous. They are continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay, 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. So what do we see? That, you know, continuous, the second simile comes up. What is the second simile? The second simile is about what? It is about the stars. Now stars on one hand, and the other hand we have the daffodils. So daffodils compared to the stars. Now what is the point of comparison here? The point of comparison is the continuity. Number one is continuity. Number two is the shining aspect of it, the luster, the brilliance of the stars and the brilliance of the daffodil flowers, which are yellow in color, and they are twinkling on the Milky Way. So now what is the Milky Way? Milky Way is where you find a cluster of stars. This is the Milky Way, where you find stars are clustered together, all of them are all together, and you find that, you know, you cannot simply count them, you cannot know which star or how many stars. If you look at the night sky, you cannot make how many stars you have seen. So that is how he comes to say about the, about the stars in the Milky Way. And they stretched in never ending line, the line that never seems to end. The daffodils never seem to end, because for miles together they were stretching. The miles together you find the daffodils, they stretched in a never ending line along the margin of a bay. Now what is a bay? It's a bordering, you know, that bordering of the lake. So lake is there, daffodils are growing all through, and what do you find? That, you know, the daffodils are attracting. They reminded the poet of something. What did they remind the poet of? They reminded the poet of the numerous stars that you find in the Milky Way. So along the margin of the bay, and then he talks about a number. 10,000. When you say 10,000, it's a huge number. So 10,000 saw I at a glance. So what is this glance? To have a quick look. When suddenly you look at something, you say, oh, I saw this. So 10,000 I saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance, a very lively manner, very enthusiastic manner. They were all dancing. So both the stanzas, the first one and the second one, we talked about the simile, the comparison that the poet makes, and the first one comparing himself to that of a cloud, the loneliness of a cloud, that he feels that the cloud is going lonely and he was lonely. But suddenly you find who has given them company? It is the daffodils. And the second part of it, where you find the continuity of the stars and the continuity of the daffodils, the brilliance, the luster, the sparkling effect of the daffodils and the stars. along the margin of the bay, and 10,000 saw I at a glance. So, it is a hyperbolic statement that he makes, hyperbolic exaggeration. He makes 10,000. He has not counted them 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. He suddenly sees them and feels they are huge in number. So, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. The second stanza, where you have continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Continuous as the stars, the simile between the simile that two dissimilar things. What are the two dissimilar things? We are having the stars on one hand, and on the other hand there is the daffodils. Now, two dissimilar things, but we have one point of similarity. What is the point of similarity? The point of similarity is their continuity, because the stars in the Milky Way, they stretch in an unending manner, as if for miles together they are stretching. The same thing has happened with that of the daffodils. They are also stretching for miles together, as the poet's eyes reaches out to see where they have ended, but the poet is unable to see it. He is so miles together, he can see those beautiful golden colored bell shaped flowers, and many of them together. So, and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never ending line. So, they are not going to end anywhere, they are not going to stop anywhere, there is no gap between, it goes on and on. Along the margin of a bay, so the border of the lake, they are bordering the lake, and the border of the lake, you can find that they are stretching for miles together. 10,000 saw I at a glance. So, when I wanted to have a quick look, the poet is saying when he wanted to take a quick look, what did he see? He saw that it was like many in number. So, that many in number has been stressed many times. He now tells 10,000. When he says 10,000, it is not an exact number. He is not giving you an exact number. He has not counted them 1, 2, 3 like that. So, what has he done? He just gives an exaggerated account of it. How many could he see at a glance? When suddenly you look up and see, you say, I saw so many. Okay? So, that is how he says 10,000. This particular figure of speech is called the hyperbole. Hyperbole gives you a exaggerated statement. So, here he gives the 10,000. Previously, we had come across simile, that is another figure of speech. Sometimes students, they ask you a question like, what are the figures of speech that has been used in this particular stanza or in this particular poem. So, the first thing I told you was about the simile. The second thing that I am telling you now is about the hyperbole. So, along the margin of a bay, 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. So, how were the daffodils looking? They are looking very, very happy, very lively, as if it's not something which is not having life. It is something which is full of life, full of zest, and full of enthusiasm. So, it is a very, very lively dance that is being described by the poet. So, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. Where did he see all this? He saw them along the border of the lake. Now, border of the lake is the place where the poet has seen them all through. We had also discussed in the first stanza what was the location of the daffodils. The daffodils were there under the trees, beneath the trees, and all through stretching by the lake side. So, here also you see the same thing. So, he is talking about the tossing of the heads in sprightly dance. And earlier also we had seen about the similes. So, two similes we have already come across, where you find the dissimilar elements. In the first simile, you had seen the cloud and the poet. Now, two dissimilar things, and what is the point of similarity? Point of similarity is that the poet is feeling lonely. The poet was lonely. He was wandering aimlessly. He didn't know where he was exactly going. He was just, roaming about. And he thought the clouds that are high up in the sky and over the valleys, over the hills, and the clouds were also lonely. But later on, where he finds himself, amidst this pleasure, this nature's, bounty or nature's pleasure, what does he find? Elements of nature all around him, so beautiful, and giving him that kind of company where he is feeling very happy, because he could see what? He could see the golden yellow colored, well shaped daffodils, and the daffodils which were, so many, so huge in number, so large in number. That is why he had used the word crowd, and he has also used the word host. These two words were used to show the impact that the daffodils had made on him. So, the daffodils impact that was on him was that, many in number. That is why crowd and host. Host also, as I said, has another meaning, which hosted a show. Hosted a show where you find that, beautiful show that was presented as if Wordsworth has come as a guest, and something was presented to the poet on behalf of the daffodils. So, that is how he had come to tell you about the large number of daffodils, and also we come to know about the figure of speech. The figure of speech are two in numbers that we came across here. One was the simile and the other was the hyperbole. And again he talks about the dancing, describing why was he so much attracted towards the daffodils. The reason was the lively dance, the sprightly dance of whose? Of the daffodils. And how the daffodil, you have to remember the color of the daffodils was always golden yellow in color, and it was a bell shaped flower, and there were many in number, and they attracted the poet as he was moving aimlessly around that place. And suddenly he was attracted by them, and how he was totally his attention was totally on these daffodils only. And later on we will come to the next stanza. Students, when we are talking about the twinkling aspect of the stars that are there in the Milky Way, what it is like? What is twinkling? That, if you have heard that poem, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, the small children, they will be doing a action saying twinkle twinkle little star. What does it mean? It shines and fades, it shines and fades. So, stars, because they are at a distance, so what happens is when you look up at them, it appears as if they are shining and they are again fading away, then shining and again fading away. So, but they are so many, we said stars we cannot count. We look into the night sky, and what do we find? That you cannot count the stars. You think, how many stars have you seen? We say, many stars I have seen. Like that, the poet is saying that continuous as the stars. So, there is a continuity. So, where does he see the stars like? He talks about the Milky Way. In the Milky Way, we find the clusters of stars very closely packed together. Okay, so many stars, they closely packed together. Like that, in the daffodils also, they have stretched for miles together, and they look as if they have been packed together, just like we have a packet of sweets. What do you find them? You get it from Ganguram or some sweet shop. You find that, they are very closely packed. So, if you, like that, when you find the daffodil flowers, the poet sees that, the daffodil flowers are very in close clusters all together, just nearby. Only you can see a stretch of, just like someone has spread a bed sheet of yellow color, that golden yellow color. So, that gives him, so the comparison that he makes is, two dissimilar things, as I said, I am repeating it, two dissimilar things. And what are the two dissimilar things? They are the stars, they are the daffodils on one hand, the stars on the other. What are the aspects of similarity? The aspect is number one, continuity, number two, that he is saying the shine, the lustre, and number three, never ending. It goes on and on. So, the margin of a bay, and he has seen these flowers around the margin of the bay, and the number that he has already spoken about, countless, which cannot be counted, which cannot be, I mean, you can only say how many you saw, many in number, numerous, countless. And then he is saying about what? Tossing their heads in sprightly, a very lively dance, a dance which is filled with so much of vigor and enthusiasm, a very lively dance, as if, you know, somebody is doing it all, I mean, his heart and soul, dancing with his heart and soul. So, tossing their heads. So, how does he find? This is all because the poet is now become one with nature. He finds himself one with the daffodils, and that is how he says, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. And they stretch, and these daffodils have been compared in the second stanza to that of the stars, because of the luminous effect, because of the continuity, because of the never ending line that they are all together. Now, so again we can talk about that and the first stanza where we had about the cloud and the mental state of the poet. The second stanza about what? The stars, and the other one is the daffodils. So, this is all about the first and second stanza where we talked about the comparison that the poet makes. To the third stanza of the poem Daffodils. Let me read out the third stanza for you. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. Now, students, we had already discussed what the poet was feeling like in the first few lines of the poem. He was feeling lonely. In the second, and then he was feeling lonely, and he was comparing himself to that of the cloud. But then he came across the host of golden daffodils. The host of golden daffodils presented him such a show that the poet felt one with them, and his heart danced with them. Then comes to the second stanza where we had a beautiful comparison of the poet keeping the daffodils on one hand and the stars on the other, where he could talk about the beautiful shining aspect of the stars and the shining golden color of the daffodils. Then he also talked about the continuity. After all this, we come to see the third stanza where he is talking about the waves. Now, as we talked about the gentle breeze blowing, which created a kind of to and fro motion among the daffodils, so that it came as a synchronized manner, in a very synchronized manner and a rhythmic manner, giving the impact of a dance. Here also we find the same breeze that it blows, you know, you find the little waves created, and these waves were what kind of waves? Sparkling waves. He uses the adjective sparkling here. Why? Because the sun rays are falling and the waves are shining very brightly. And they are not only, they are shining and they are looking very, very extremely beautiful. So, we have two things now. What are the two things? Daffodils dance, the dancing of the daffodils and the dancing of the waves. As if to the poet it appears there is a competition. Now, what kind of competition? A dancing competition, and a dancing competition that is taking place between whom? Between the daffodils on one hand and the waves on the other. Now, when there is a competition, obviously you will talk about what? You will talk about who is the winner, who comes first. So, now we find one more thing. What does the poet say? The poet says that, you know, but there is a line, but they outdid. Who out? They refers to whom? They refers to the daffodils. And here there is another word, the waves beside them. Now, them refers to whom? Them refers to the daffodils. So, the waves were dancing, the daffodils were dancing. Now, who is better? The daffodils. How do you know they are better? Because the poet has said outdid. So, when he says that outdid, that means surpassed. Who surpassed? Daffodils surpassed. Whom? The waves. So, outdid the sparkling waves in glee. Glee is happiness. Glee is joy. Now, they are doing it, they are doing the see when we do hard work, sometimes you feel very unhappy also, you are not having a very nice face, but the daffodils are they have joined the competition, they are emerging the winners and they are doing it joyfully, happily, in a very gay manner. Okay. So, now when the poet is saying a poet could not but be gay, the third line we are coming to in the third stanza, a poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. So, when he says that in such a jocund company, what is a jocund company? A jocund company is a happy company, a company which makes you feel happy. You must have noticed when we are with good people around, with people who are making lot of jokes, fun, frolic and all that, how do you feel? You feel happy. Someone is very unhappy and something has happened, someone has beaten up or something, scolded, then you find the face that he makes will be very unhappy. So, when you are with unhappy people, how do you feel? You also feel unhappy. But when you are with happy people around, how will you feel? You will feel happy. So, a poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. Now, who provided that jocund company? The jocund company was provided by the waves and also the dancing daffodils. Then he is saying, I gazed and gazed but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. I gazed and gazed. Now he is saying, I looked steadily, with interest, with surprise. Don't you feel that the poet was interested to see the dancing of the daffodils? Yes, he was. And wasn't he surprised to see such a beautiful, show there? Yes, he was surprised. So, what you find? He was gazing. When something attracts your attention, what do? You try to look a little further. What is this? So, when you look at it, so little thought, what wealth the show to me had brought. What kind of wealth? He considers the beauty of the daffodils, the dancing daffodils, the waves. This is a kind of source of happiness. Now see, when you keep money in your bank, what do? You keep it for future use. That is the wealth you have. I'll say how much money you have in the bank. You'll say so much of money. That is the wealth you have. So, what wealth the show to me had brought. The show hosted by the daffodils had given him such a kind of feeling. He is saying that it can be also referred to as a metaphor. This is another figure of speech. He has not used the word like. Here, I wandered like a cloud. When I said like, that was a simile. You can use the expressions like and as, that becomes simile. When you don't use these expressions like and as, what wealth. So, he considers this beauty of nature which will be a rich treasure house of happiness in the future. This is actually what? This is actually a wealth for him. What wealth? The show hosted by the daffodils. So, it never occurred to him then that this would be a great show for me, and this show that I saw presently will be a kind of, it can be used in the future. So, what wealth the show to me had, but the show that was presented by the daffodils, by the waves, it was a huge source of wealth for me. And that is how what you find, what wealth the show to me had brought. So, it has brought me such happiness. Why happiness? Because he says, I was amongst these beautiful sources of joy and pleasure. What are the sources of joy and pleasure? The daffodils. The daffodils gave him all the joy. And who else gave him the joy? The waves. And these things, these are called the elements of nature. These things gave him joy. So, that is how he describes them as a jocund company. Students, we sometimes have a question like, what is a jocund company and who were there in the jocund company? Now, when you get a question like this, we will have to answer. Jocund company is a happy company. A happy company that is provided by whom? By the waves, by the golden daffodils. They together, they have given that kind of impression that it is a jocund company, and for the poet it will be a source of happiness for years to come. A present pleasure that he gets in the present time becomes a source of happiness in the future. Whenever you feel bad, whenever you want to remember, whenever you want to recollect, you can see them just in front of you flashing, and you know, you'll find as if you are there. Sometimes you close your eyes and you shut your eyes and then you sit down, you can remember something beautiful. In similar way, he can remember these beautiful moments, recapitulate these beautiful moments, remember these beautiful moments, and then you find he is happy. He is again happy because the happiness has been a wealth which we can store for future, we can depend on them in future for making future use of it. Well, we have already done the 3 stanzas of the poem. Now we are moving on to the concluding stanza, and if you remember, the last thing that he said was that, you know, he never knew that this kind of show that the daffodils hosted for him would be a kind of future treasure house, where he will find so much treasure house of what? Treasure house of happiness. He never knew that. But now he will discuss how did he know that, you know, it was a rich treasure house of happiness in future. So, I will read out the last stanza for you and explain it. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodils. Now, what is he describing about? For oft. Now, what is the meaning of the word oft? Oft is the word which we use in poetry, but in prose when we say, it will become often, O-F-T-E-N. When often, so very often, when on my couch I lie. What is a couch? When you relax, suppose you are feeling very tired, what will you do? You will go and relax in your sofa. It is a kind of sofa. So, whenever he is lying on his couch, either in a relaxing mood, or maybe when you are very unhappy about something, you are disturbed about something, and you know, you are filled with anxiety, what will you do? You feel like, you know, lying somewhere, maybe in your cot or maybe somewhere in a sofa. Sofa is also giving you that cushioning effect, and you feel, you know, that you feel a bit comfortable. So, whenever he is lying on his couch, that is his sofa, in what kind of mood? This question also comes very often in your exam. What are described, or what are the 2 kinds of moods described in the poem, or what are the 2 moods that are described by the poet? What is it describing? 2 moods, vacant or in pensive mood. Now, what is the pensive mood? Pensive is sad and thoughtful. Vacant, usually when we say, suppose this seat is vacant, suppose we talk about a seat, a chair is vacant, a room is vacant. When we say that means nobody is there, nobody is occupying it. Now, when he says vacant, maybe he thinks that, you know, there is no particular thought inside his mind. So many kinds of thoughts come to you. So, not that any particular thought is in your mind. So, the poet says that when he is on his couch, that time maybe there are 2 kinds of moods he is having. One mood can be when there is no particular thought, nothing particular he is thinking about, or maybe he is also in a sad or a thoughtful, very thoughtful. He is thinking of something. Many times you see your friends come and call you, you do not notice. Your mama comes and tells you, mother comes and says, come and have your lunch. You might not have noticed your mother coming inside the house. So, you are in a very thoughtful mood. So, that is how very thoughtful, and maybe it is a sad mood. Suppose you are not happy about something. Maybe the results have come out or something like that. Someone scolded you and you are not happy about it. So, you say, I am in a pensive mood, I am in a sad mood. Now, whenever he was in such a kind of mood, you find that they flash. Who flashes? They, the show that was hosted by the daffodils, or the dancing daffodils, the golden color flowers that were dancing around, you know, him and making him happy when he was physically present with the daffodils. They flash upon that inward eye. Where is that inward eye? inward eye is that mental plane. On the mental plane they flash, in your memory it can flash, or it comes as a flash of lightning, suddenly it comes and goes away. If you remember something very nice, suppose your brother is staying in the United States, and he had come for suppose a Rakhi or some celebration, and he had come. That's a very, very happy occasion that you had to celebrate. And whenever you are sad, you remember your brother cannot come whenever he likes it. So we are separated by huge distance and all that. So whenever you close your eyes and remember, you can almost visualize your brother. It's almost like that. When he is unhappy, when he is in a very sad mood, he visualizes what? He visualizes the Dancing Daffodils, the show that was hosted by the Dancing Daffodils. Not only the Dancing Daffodils were there, we also found something else. There were also the waves which were dancing there. So they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. So that gives, solitude here is not merely lonely. Solitude, you enjoy. Sometimes, you cannot enjoy in company. When you are dancing, you are together, you are going to a party, you enjoy company, but sometimes you want to listen to a music or something like that which you want to enjoy all alone. You remain silent and you enjoy it. So here the bliss, that is the great joy. Bliss means great joy. The great joy that he is experiencing. Why is he experiencing that great joy? The great joy because he is now alone and he is experiencing this great joy. Now the great joy that fills him with tranquility, serenity, and feeling a calm and composed man. He feels very calm. See, when you are unhappy, when you are in a depressing mood, when you are in anxiety, how do you feel? You feel very much disturbed, isn't it? I mean, don't know what to do, what will make you feel good. But here, when you find that the poet is thinking of they flash upon the daffodil, they flash upon his inward eye, suddenly he feels very calm and composed and he feels very relaxed. And then my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodil. So what he feels like now? He feels that he is having lot of pleasure, joy, happiness. He is ecstatic now. He is filled with ecstasy and he is feeling happy. The happiness all around him and the unhappiness goes away, and it gives a place to what? Happiness. Unhappiness goes away and gives place to happiness. He was lying in his couch on his sofa and he was not feeling happy. He was feeling in a very sorrowful mood, and the two moods that I told you can be vacant or pensive mood. And now how does he feel? He feels happy. The happiness is coming all to himself, and then he feels very calm, very composed, very happy. And when you feel happy, your spirits are uplifted. How do you feel? You feel as if, I can go and dance right now. So, and then my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodils. So, the dancing daffodils makes his heart. Now, this is not the picture that he is seeing. He is not going directly to the daffodil. He doesn't run to the daffodils to get pleasure. What does he do? Sitting, imagining, and that flashing upon his inward eye. And that inward eye is the mental plane. Okay, when you have this, it's a kind of, mind's eye. You can see everything in your mind's eye. Shut your eyes for a moment and you will experience that kind of bliss, that kind of happiness, that kind of great joy. So he shuts his mind, shuts his eye, and then he can imagine what? He can imagine the dancing daffodils, although he is not physically present there. So this is something which is taking place in the future. Now, the first three stanzas that you were discussing, he was very much with whom? With the daffodils. So that was the present moment he was describing. And the last stanza, when he comes over, it is of something of the future. And when he talks of the future, there can be many moods that we experience. When we talk of future, we can say not always a person is happy. A person can be unhappy also. When you are unhappy, and you have a good friend, you remember that word I used, jocund company, from the poem, that was in the third stanza, where you find that, she said, when you are amidst good people, when amidst good company, you feel happy, your spirits are uplifted, you feel as if you are no longer in pain, in sorrow. You are in pain and sorrow when you were in a pensive mood. but you are experiencing what? The pain and sorrow have gone away, and they have given way to what? They have given way to pleasure, they have given way to happiness, they have given you to all good things, and that makes you very happy. You are in a blissful state and you are experiencing great joy. So, the poet is happy and he says, so I can count upon this happiness. So, not only this is something like, you have some account and you can draw money. If you have an account and you have some money only, you can use the ATM. Like that, whenever you are, whenever you are unhappy, you go and try out that, my happiness lies near the daffodils, and imagine the daffodils and get back the happiness. So, it is something like that. My heart with pleasure feels. So, always whenever he was in these kind of moods, vacant or pensive mood, he was actually remembering the daffodils, sight of the dancing daffodils, sight, S-I-G-H-T, sight of the dancing daffodils. The sight of the dancing daffodils gave him what? It gave him lot of pleasure. So, all his pain goes away, and what does he gain actually? He gains pleasure, or he gets pleasure. So, the dance, and finally what you find, this is the fourth stanza, and we will just make a recap of whatever we have learnt in all these four stanzas. So, the first stanza, when he was talking about, when he was talking about the first stanza where he is talking about the daffodils, he was talking about the cloud, he was talking about himself, he was saying how the cloud, he was feeling lonely. So, from loneliness you find to the pleasure that he gets from the daffodils. So, the first stanza where there was loneliness, there was a feeling that even the clouds are lonely, because when you feel lonely, you tend to project those kind of feelings. When you are unhappy, you trying to see the world unhappy around you. When you are happy, you see everything happy around you. So, here also that he says, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. So, he saw what? He saw those daffodils, he was very happy. So, first stanza we will have a recap like talking about the comparison between the poet and the cloud, and then coming down to see the all of a sudden seeing those beautiful daffodils, and then about how, where did he see the daffodils, the location, the positioning of the daffodils, and what were the daffodils doing, the action, the activity of the daffodils according to the poet. What does he feel? Does he feel that the daffodils were happy? Yes. How do you know? Because he was talking about the fluttering and dancing. We do fluttering and dancing, fluttering and dancing, the to and fro motion, that was in the first stanza. Coming to the second one, where you find the continuity of the the stars and that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. So, comparison between the two things, that are the stars and the daffodils. And then he says about the exaggeration part of it, where he says 10,000. That was a hyperbole, where he said so many I saw at a glance, So, tossing their head, all of them were equally enjoying enjoying and dancing in the that area. And then the third stanza where he says the waves, he talks about the waves. So, starting from clouds, he comes down to the daffodils, the stars, and then coming down to the waves, and then saying the comparison between the waves and how they were better, the way between the competition that you take between the daffodils and the waves, and you find the daffodils are better, are doing a better performance, and then suddenly from glance to it becomes gaze. He was glancing initially, glancing means just giving a single look and say, oh, I saw something like that, but now he is gazing, because that gave him happiness. He is saying, where did I get this happiness from? Let me see, where did I get this happiness from? So, he started gazing, and then he saw the wealth, what kind of wealth it had brought. And then the final stanza, where he is saying, not only this was happiness for the present moment, it is happiness forever, happiness for the future. And then he is saying they flash upon that inward eye. So, how do they get happiness in future? Whenever you try to recollect these happy memories, whenever you try to reminisce these happy memories, what can you see? You can see the dancing daffodils. So, my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodils. Now, students, we can have a few questions here also, which you can discuss, like because we get a stanza in the examination, we get a stanza, and then we have questions basing on that stanza. For example, where did the poet find the daffodils? Where did the poet find the daffodils? Well, we will have to answer from the first stanza. The poet saw the daffodils beneath the trees and beside the lake. So, that is how what you find. So, this is how you find, you know, the question, the answer will go. And how did he feel? He felt like a wandering cloud, the first stanza. So, what were the daffodils doing? They appeared to the poet as if they were dancing, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. You can have a question on, as I said, about the figures of speech that has been used. For example, in the second stanza, 10,000 is a hyperbole. First stanza and second stanza, use of simile. We have this wealth, where he talks in the third stanza, that is a metaphor. Then we can say what are the two moods of the poet. We can talk about the last stanza, two moods, vacant or pensive. How did he feel? I mean, when did he feel that kind of when he was lying on his couch, and what kind of experience did he have in that? He had a beautiful experience, saying that, you know, my heart with pleasure feels that, you know, he no more feels the pain. All he feels is the happiness all around him. So, these kind of questions can come because we have objective questions, short answer type questions, and you can answer in this manner, and see to it that the spellings and other things that you see in your in your book, and find out what exactly they mean. What are the different, like whatever the question demands, we have to answer accordingly. If a question demands about the mood of the poet, straight away hit at the question and write down the answer, that it is about the vacant or pensive mood. If it talks about, suppose what is the bliss of solitude, or why, because he has the tranquil feeling, he has a feeling that, you know, he is filled with so many happy kind of feelings, and, you know, that is which is the bliss of solitude, he says. So, you can explain that way also. And wherever you say how do you know the expression of happiness that is there shown by the world of nature? Suppose the daffodils, how do you find the expression of happiness tossing their heads, number one. Number two, you find they were the sparkling waves, because the happiness is reflected in the sparkling of the waves, or they were dancing, fluttering. All these words would actually give you the impression that all around him, the world around him, the world of nature is happy, and in the lap of nature we find happiness everywhere. So, this is how we come to the end of the poem. That was by William Wordsworth, who was a romantic poet and was a nature poet, and he found lot of solace, comfort in the lap of nature, in the world of nature. So, this is how the poem Daffodils ends up. Thank you.